Do you believe you know the French Revolution? When you imagine it, do you see the infamous guillotine, the oversized, menacing blade ready to fall? Set that image aside for a moment. I'm about to share with you one of the most horrific executions in history, carried out not by a machine but by a frenzied mob using their bare hands. This is the story of Princess Lamballe, Marie Antoinette's closest friend. What this mob did to her on September 3, 1792, defies belief. We are going to uncover the verified facts surrounding her murder and dismantle the gruesome legends that continue to circulate today. This tale is one of unwavering loyalty, sheer terror, and how quickly a human being can be transformed into a target of hatred that must be eradicated. Before becoming public enemy number one, Lamballe lived a life filled with extraordinary twists. Born Marie Thérèse Louise de Savocaron in Italy in 1749 to a vastly wealthy family, she married the Prince de Lamballe at the age of 17, one of the richest men in France. But tragedy struck when her husband died just a year later, leaving her a widow at the tender age of 18. This personal loss paved her way directly into the extravagant yet perilous world of the French court at Versailles, where she met another young foreigner, Marie Antoinette. Their friendship flourished instantly, becoming legendary amidst a palace filled with falsehoods. In each other they found a genuine bond. When Marie Antoinette ascended to the throne, she appointed Lamballe as the superintendent of her household, a role highly esteemed within the court. This was no mere job. Lamballe was more than staff, she was family. However, Lamballe's loyalty came with a terrible price. As public opinion began to sour on Marie Antoinette, it inevitably turned against her loyal friends as well. Disturbing pamphlets filled with malicious rumors circulated, accusing the Queen's inner circle of various crimes and scandalous behavior. The close friendships that Lamballe cherished with women like Antoinette were twisted into salacious gossip about supposed secret love affairs, inciting even greater public outrage. The quiet, supportive friend became villainized, seen as a corrupting influence, a spy for Austria, and an enemy of France. A giant target was painted on her back, and her fate was about to spiral into darkness. The storming of the Bastille on July 14, 1789, marked a catastrophic turning point. The monarchy began to dismantle, and aristocrats fled the country in a panic, desperate to escape the approaching chaos. At this time, Princess Lamballe was safe in London, where her friends and family urged her to stay. "Don't go back, it's too dangerous." Yet her loyalty to Marie Antoinette could not be swayed. The Queen was in danger, and Lamballe felt it was her duty to return to her side. In a heartfelt letter, Marie Antoinette implored her to come back, stating, "I must live and die with her." In a solemn acknowledgement of the risks, Lamballe wrote her will, deeply aware that she might be heading back into the jaws of death. Yet she traveled back to Paris, walking right into the inferno. She witnessed the royal family's desperate escape attempts and was present on June 20, 1792, when a violent mob stormed the palace. Eyewitness accounts reveal that throughout the pandemonium, Lamballe's sole concern was for the Queen's safety, a loyalty that would ultimately cost her everything. On August 10, 1792, the monarchy was entirely upended. The royal family was imprisoned within the fortress of the Temple, while Lamballe found herself separated from the Queen and confined in La Force prison, one of the darkest, filthiest, and most terrifying places imaginable. By late August 1792, Paris was in a state of total panic. Rumors swirled about an enemy army marching toward the city, threatening destruction if any harm befell the royal family. This fear morphed into ghastly frenzy. The revolutionaries became convinced that spies and traitors lurked in the city's prisons, just waiting for an opportunity to attack. Revolution leader Georges Danton cried out, "To conquer them, we must dare. Dare again, always dare, and France is saved." But this dare turned into a monstrous wave of violence. On September 2nd, the slaughter began. For 5 consecutive days, mobs descended upon the prisons, launching what would come to be known as the September Massacres. They dragged men and women from their cells, conducted sham trials that lasted mere seconds, and then mercilessly executed them in the courtyards. The streets ran red with blood. Where was Princess Lamballe during this carnage? Trapped within the confines of her cell, she could only listen to the harrowing screams wafting through the air. She was not just any ordinary prisoner. She was the ultimate prize-a-living symbol of everything the mob loathed. It was only a matter of time before they would come for her. On the fateful morning of September 3rd, they did. 2 guards entered her cell, and the violent killings had persisted throughout the night. Now it was her turn to face the so-called tribunal. This was no legitimate court, it was a farce. A few men sat at a table stained with blood and wine, tasked with the grim duty of deciding who would live and who would die in mere moments. When Lambal walked into the chamber, she nearly fainted at the sight of the bodies piled in the courtyard. They asked her a few questions and she managed to remain composed. Then came the pivotal moment. They demanded she swear allegiance to liberty and equality, renouncing her loyalty to the king and queen. This was her final chance for survival, yet she courageously refused. "I will readily swear to the first," she declared, "but I cannot swear to the second." "It is not in my heart," a voice near her whispered. "Swear, or you will die." But she remained steadfast, refusing to betray her friend. Another version of events suggests that she replied, "Whether the first die sooner or later is a matter of indifference to me. I have made the sacrifice of my life." The verdict was instantaneous. The judge proclaimed, "Let Madame be set at liberty." To anyone else, this sounded like a reprieve, but it was a hidden signal code for the mob waiting outside. It meant she was marked for them. With a forceful push, she was thrust through the door, heading straight into the jaws of her executioners. The moment she stepped into the courtyard, absolute chaos erupted. The ground had become a slaughterhouse, littered with bodies as the mob surged in with twisted faces filled with rage. What happened next is a nightmarish tale, and we must separate the verified truths from the wild rumors that have emerged. The confirmed history is still shocking. What we know for certain is this. Eyewitnesses reported that the small woman dressed in white stood before the mob for just an instant. Then the first blow struck, either a pike or a hammer, hitting her in the back of the head. Her cap fell away, her long blonde hair spilling down. A second blow landed on her forehead, sending her crashing to the ground. What unfolded next was a horrifying frenzy. The mob swarmed her, stabbing and beating her to death with pikes and sabers in a brutal, chaotic display. It was over shockingly fast. But they weren't finished. In a final act of degradation, they severed her head from her body. This act was emblematic of their contempt. They stripped her corpse naked and left it lying in the street, her remains never officially recovered. These stark, cold facts represent the unmistakable truth. She suffered a horrific end for simply refusing to betray her friend. The reality of what transpired is dreadful enough. Yet, what happened next combined with the myths that arose in the aftermath is almost too grotesque to bear. As we delve deeper into this haunting tale and separate the grim realities from the ghastly fictions, take a moment to hit that subscribe button. Your support enables us to explore these dark corners of history, and you won't want to miss what's next. The murder of Lambal didn't end with her execution. The mob wielded her head as a weapon of psychological intimidation, hoisting it on a pike while parading through the streets of Paris. Their destination? The Temple prison, where they aimed to force Marie Antoinette to behold the horrific fate inflicted upon her closest companion. This was pure psychological warfare. Upon arriving at the temple, the mob gathered beneath the royal window, clamoring for the queen to come out and witness the grotesque trophy. Rumors even circulated that they wanted her to kiss the lips of her dead friend. Inside the castle, the royal family listened, paralyzed by fear. The king's valet recognized the severed head and grasped its implication. As Marie Antoinette pressed for information about the commotion, guards rushed in to shield the window. What remains uncertain is whether she ever laid eyes on that horrifying sight. However, what is known is that a guard bluntly informed her, "They are trying to show you the head of Princess Lambal." Just hearing those words shattered her. Marie Antoinette reportedly screamed and collapsed, overcome by the weight of what had unfolded. She wept through the night, haunted by the brutal reality. The mob had succeeded in their vile goal, inflicting deep psychological damage on the queen by murdering her friend as a form of torture. The horrific image of her friend as severed head would haunt Marie Antoinette for the rest of her life. While the stark truth of Lamballe's demise is horrifying enough, the myths that arose in its wake are even more grotesque. For centuries, outrageous tales have circulated, manipulating her tragedy into grotesque fictions. Let's debunk some of the most infamous myths surrounding her fate. The most notorious myth involves her alleged sexual desecration. Stories emerged that she was raped, that her breasts were severed, and that her genitals were mutilated. This narrative is almost certainly false. Contemporary records, even those from individuals who despised her, do not support such claims. These grotesque details were likely fabricated later, primarily as royalist propaganda meant to depict revolutionaries as inhumane monsters. Additionally, there is documentation of the items found in her pockets, indicating that her body was still clothed at the time of her death. Furthermore, rumors of cannibalism spread, suggesting that her heart was torn from her body and consumed. This, too, appears to be a complete fabrication, sensationalized for shock value. Equally absurd are other persistent myths. One story claimed her severed head was taken to a hairdresser and styled to look more presentable for the queen. This never happened. Another account suggests she concealed a secret message for Marie Antoinette within her hair, a romantic sentiment devoid of credible evidence. The most enduring myth remains that Marie Antoinette was forced to kiss Lamballe's severed lips, a scenario that multiple historical records explicitly deny. So why do these bizarre myths emerge? The answer lies in human fascination with horror stories and the tendency for sensationalized propaganda. Yet, when we focus on the grotesque fictions, we risk losing sight of the real woman at the center of this tragedy. The death of Princess Lamballe was not a state-sanctioned execution, it was a lynching, a ritualistic murder committed by a mob that saw her merely as a symbol rather than a person. Her fate marks one of the most infamous moments of the French Revolution. The verified truth of her demise is unsettling. She was a woman whose only crime was loyalty, a loyalty that led her to return to a city torn apart by chaos. For that loyalty, she endured a sham tribunal, upheld her principles, and was delivered to a bloodthirsty mob that beat her to death and decapitated her. Her severed head was then weaponized in a bid for psychological torture. The reality is eerie enough on its own. It doesn't require exaggerations about cannibalism or sexual desecrations. The story of Princess Lamballe serves as a stark reminder of the devastating human cost of revolution. It compels us to confront the painful truth that the most horrifying tales are not always fabrications. They often reveal the darkest aspects of humanity. She remains a tragic figure, overshadowed by the unimaginable brutality of her death. What shocked you most about the true story of Princess Lamballe? Do you believe history should focus solely on verified facts, or should we also explore the powerful myths that arise? Share your thoughts in the comments below. For more profound deep dives into the dark and often misunderstood chapters of our history, be sure to subscribe. Subscribe to our channel and hit the bell to support our work. Never miss an upload. Like this vid, drop a comment and share it with others to help us grow this historical community.